Okay, y'all. Nate or Gino here, back with another recording for y'all. I'm playing the Free People once again, trying to get some practice with the Free People in. My opponent, Navan, is playing Shadow. This is a fun game, as I think there's a couple of little tips and tricks that I kind of discovered throughout this game, and some very small optimization things. But some good luck on both sides, so it's pretty fun. Um, so I start off with, the entire thing starts off interesting. So my opponent decides to allocate 0 eyes, which generally means we're basically playing a rush. I'm going to rush the Fellowship as fast as I possibly can. My opponent is going to rush Shadow Military as fast as possible. And they get just sort of an awesome roll first turn, 2 musters to go ahead and get Saruman, and then enough movement to kind of get anything you want. Um, I get through Day and the Night and Gray Company, both of which are kind of useful for a Free People military victory. As Gray Company is kind of like a muster anywhere card, and Through a Day and a Night is pretty powerful. My opponent starts off with fighting Urukai and Nazgul Strike. Nazgul Strike, really great. It's one of those. It turns a Palantir into a character die, or I guess not character die, into a sword. Um, and yeah, you can kind of see what we both have, and you can decide um, what would you do in my position as Free People, and what would you do as Shadow in Navan's position. So take a moment to sort of think this out, and I'll kind of show you what we decide. Okay, so I start by drawing. And I do think this is the right move. I have no playable cards. Um, I've got these two Wills of the West, which I'm almost certainly going to be using to move. There's no eyes in the pool. Um, and I don't have anything to do with this Palantir. Now, there are things that you could do. So, some things that you could do is one, you could wait to see if you get hit by a reveal, like a 2 reveal, kill Gandalf, and then use the Palantir to go ahead and hide with Strider. Um, or you could go ahead and use a ring this turn to go ahead and get 3 movement against 0 eyes, get through Moria, which I think is also powerful. But I decided not to. I didn't want to give an eye to my opponent on the first turn. They only have 2 musters, which means they can't get both the Witch King and Saruman. And you can see what my opponent does. They go ahead and start by moving a little bit. I pass. And my opponent goes for Saruman, which you'll see pretty shortly. Um, they start moving. They start moving towards the blue line. Um, I go ahead and I do 2 free moves. Pretty simple. They're looking like they're moving towards Duin Lorien, moving that person out of North Dunland, and it gives you a pretty good uh, sight there. Um, they continue to move, um, and I go ahead and I do the classic move of moving to Weston Net and Old Forest Road, seeing as they are going for Dew. Um, one thing to kind of note here, which my opponent last time that I played did this, and I thought this was pretty effective. My opponent could have gotten, instead of Saruman, they could have gotten the Witch King, giving them the extra die, and also giving Sauron, getting them all the way to war. What they could have done is moved their forces in Dol Guldur up to Old Forest Road, attacked in Old Forest Road, attacked in Carrican, attacked in Dale. It's interesting. It's a very interesting play. It doesn't give you a lot to go after Lorien, but it does give you an early Witch King, which I think can be almost more powerful than an early Saruman. Um, Regardless, the first turn is pretty normal. I get my die back. Um, my opponent, of course, decides to add 1 eye. They get returned to Valinor, and what was their other card that they get? And the Ring is Mine. Ring is Mine, phenomenal card, probably the best red tile draw. I get Bilbo's Song, good, and I get Power to Break, at least one playable card, so that is nice. My opponent rolls. They get 3 eyes. Not excited to see that. I roll. I get 2 Palantirs. Always 2 Palantirs, too many. 1 muster and 1 Will of the West. So this is kind of interesting. What would you do in this situation? as free people, and what would you do in this situation as shadow? Um, I think free people, I think, is very, very interesting. Shadow, I think, is somewhat interesting. Um, you can kind of think you've got 3 movement, and 3 movement is just enough to go ahead and get the Witch King, which is cool. Um, it's enough for you to move to Eagle's Eyrie, take Carrick, move to Northern Ravinia, and take Dale, which goes ahead and gives you the Witch King, which is good. And you've got some extra musters, which you can do stuff with. And you can kind of see Shadow and what their hand is. So after that, I'll kind of show you what I did. So first thing I did is I play Power 2 Great. I've got Gandalf. I want to cycle. Power 2 Great is a good card. I can obviously tell they're going towards Lorien. I want to see what card I draw as early as possible to go ahead and make influence my play. So I get Help Unlooked For. Again, not really good cards. Nothing playable. I've got this Palantir. My opponent decides to muster Sauron. Of course, good, good, good. They have just enough to go ahead and get the Witch King as well. So, and I move. So here's kind of what I'm thinking. And it's kind of interesting. I don't have too much to do with this this army die at all. No one's at war. I can move the elves a little bit closer to war, but I'm always reluctant to use musters to move the elves or move any faction closer to war. Those are musters that my opponent's going to give me eventually when they attack those factions. So instead, I decide to move. And the idea here is that if I move, I will be at 3 movement. At 3 movement, I'm able to get someone like Gandalf or Gimli close enough. I think that's close enough. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Actually, I think I miscounted here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I did miscount. Ooh. Okay. Well, so I was thinking to myself that I would be able to separate someone from the Fellowship after moving 1 more, and send them up to Erebor, using for Book of Mizarble, and get the dwarves to war this turn. Or I was thinking if I get hit, I'll be able to lose Gandalf, which would be great. And if I lose Gandalf, I can get him back in Grey Havens, and then also use Book of Mizarble. Both of which I see my opponent is strongly going towards the Dew line. They're strongly going towards Lorien. This, I think, is a great way to go ahead and slow my opponent down. I think I miscounted the spaces, though, because I don't actually see a way to get Gimli there in the movement that I've got. So well, anyways, you'll kind of see what happens. I guess I get a little bit lucky. I move. My opponent does hit me, which is likely, and they draw 3, which is absolutely perfect for Gandalf. I lose Gandalf, and my opponent continues to move northward. I decide to pass. There is a little bit of a rush to get Eredor or to get Book of Mizarble, but not a massive rush. I kind of count it out, and if I go ahead and I get Gandalf back immediately, they could attack Dale. And as soon as I put Gandalf in Grey Havens, they're going to know what I'm doing, and so it's not a massive thing for them. So my opponent moves. They take Carrick. They're planning on getting the Witch King. It's kind of an obvious move. I get Gandalf, and at this point, my opponent is probably thinking to themselves, "Book of Mizarble, as why would you put Gandalf over here?" My opponent attacks Dale. I get no hits, or I get 1 hit back, but they also kill Dale. I play Book of Mizarble and get the dwarves immediately to war. Well, there you go. And here's where my opponent has a major decision, which you guys can think what you would do. Their plan was to go ahead and get the Witch King, which would have been great. But now the dwarves are at war, and I can start mustering them in Eredor or Erebor. So they've got a choice. They've got a ring. They can go ahead and use that ring to attack Erebor early, or they can choose to get the Witch King. And my opponent uses the ring and attacks Erebor. So you can see how this, if the counting was correct, it worked out very much so in my favor. Going ahead and doing that move with the ring this turn. They immediately give me back the ring, and they're faced with some stuff which we'll see next turn, which is the dwarves. I'm still going to be able to muster them in Iron Hills. Okay, so my opponent gets Ring Wraiths Are Abroad, another really good solid card, and they get Half Orcs and Goblin, really really good cards for my opponent. I get Eagles Are Coming, a terrible terrible card, and Faramir's Rangers, which is a good card if they were attacking Gondor, which they don't seem to be attacking Gondor. I don't seem to be getting really lucky with cards. That being said, as you've seen, I've gotten very lucky in terms of getting Gandalf to a 3. My opponent allocates 1 eye. There's just 1 eye in the hunt. I get this roll. It's a good roll, as I do have musters that I want to be using at the moment. So I immediately muster the dwarves, as I want to, if my opponent doesn't attack them, it's they're going to be spending more and more. And my opponent spends a die to go ahead and attack the dwarves. So they play Ring Wraiths Are Abroad to do that, which is great for them. I play Confusion. I think to myself, the more that I can whittle this force down, the more the North is going to be able to survive. I get 2 hits. They get 2 hits as well. I retreat. And now this force is way too small to go ahead and take the dwarves on. They're going to need to muster more troops up in the north. So you can see how powerful this sort of Book of Mizarbil was in just sort of defending Dale or Do. So yeah, that's pretty good. Pretty good. My opponent still only has 1 victory point, and all the points in Do are going to be hard, and Lorien is under power to great. I'm feeling pretty good. I've had some pretty good luck so far. Okay. So I pass. I want to see what my opponent is doing. My opponent gets the Southrons closer to war. They get them all the way to war. I start moving the Fellowship. My opponent misses. They start moving their troops closer towards areas. I move the Fellowship again, getting lucky, still no hits. They move from Moria to Timral Dale, basically getting ready to take Lorien. I play Faramir's Rangers, as this is, it's a card. It's, basically. And it gives me some musters down in Gondor. There were no other cards that I could have played. So I could have drawn a card, but Faramir's Rangers seems like a good thing to play at some point. It's not terrible. My opponent plays Ring Its Mind, which is great, and I muster the elves 1 closer to war. It's always annoying to spend 1 of your muster die doing these, but I don't have anyone else that I can go ahead and muster into. I could muster the north a little bit. Both Angmar and Mount Gundabad are currently empty. And at one point I had a day and a night, but I used that for Confusion. If I still had that, then perhaps there would be very good chances for military victory, seeing as I could have mustered the north some, put Gandalf in Bree, done a double move. So it could have been fun. But those were not the cards, at least not this game. Perhaps I should have. As you can see, Moria, Dol Guldur, Mount Gundabad, and Angmar are all completely empty. So maybe a military victory would have been possible, especially with this one guy in Old Forest Road. Looking at this, if I had kept through a day and a night, this could have been a very interesting turn for military victory. Anyways, we continue on with our turns. They get Palantir of Orthanc and Day Without Dawn, always a great card. I get House of Stewards. Again, it's kind of taunting me with its military victory, and then Swords of Eriador. It's kind of a useless card, but advantageous position is pretty good. I stay in Rivendell. You guys can think of whether you would stay in Rivendell or would go ahead and declare into Parth Celebrant. Um, it's you know, I didn't want to get hit with any tile drawing cards. I felt like Fellowship was doing okay already. Eh. My opponent allocates an eye. They get a lot of Palantirs. They've not been rolling super well. Oh, and I think my opponent still hasn't gotten the Witch King from last turn, which is a little bit of a mistake. Definitely. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, no Witch King. So they could have gotten the Witch King last turn. They definitely didn't need to get the Southrons and Easterlings all the way to war. I roll a fine roll. Again, too many Palantirs than what I would have preferred, but you know. And another reason why I stayed in Rivendell is I was thinking to myself, okay, if I move one more time, I could separate Strider all the way to Dol Amroth. And I already have the Grey Company, and I could separate also Boromir. So House of Stewards plus Grey Company in Dol Amroth would make it a pretty hard target to go ahead and take down. I play Swords, basically just to draw a card. I get Cured in Ships, which is phenomenal. My opponent gets the Witch King. They just move their armies to continue to attack. I think my opponent, I think this move here, I probably wouldn't have done. I probably would have waited to do this until attacking, but I guess that's fine. So they were in Umbar as well, and I guess I just kind of missed that because I didn't do anything with Gondor. But they move up to attack Pelargir. I continue to move, and this time they hit. It's been lucky to not have been hit so far, but this kind of sucks. They get a 1 revealed, and I just take the corruption, and they draw the Moria, which is 0 reveal. My opponent plays Palantir of Orthanc, and you can decide here what you would do. They've got 2 Palantirs showing, and they have Palantir of Orthanc up. I decide to immediately kill it because I don't want them to draw more. I think I noticed that they didn't have a ton of cards, and so killing this seemed like a pretty good move. Okay. They play Fighting Uruk-hai up in Erebor. They get a lot of hits immediately. I get some hits back. Basically, Erebor falls pretty quickly. I play Heroic Death. It does not matter. And they basically take it down. But again, their troops up there, there's not a ton. There's a chance that Woodland Realm could survive, especially if I move that guy from Old Forest Road in. I hide the Fellowship. My opponent, what do they do? They play Shadow is Moving, which is a phenomenal card. It's like literally a double movement, which is great. So they get all their stuff moving. I move one more time. I get hit again. I draw a random. I think to myself, you've got a 3, so drawing a random isn't terrible. Even if you get Strider, at least you're losing him efficiently. But I get a Hobbit, and I plop the Hobbit in Fanghorn because Gandalf is over in Greyhaven, so there's no threat from Ints unless I plop a Hobbit down there. So again, things have been going well for me on the Fellowship so far. My opponent musters a couple more Nazgul, and we're on to our next turn. So it's looking fine so far. The Fellowship is a couple of moves out. I think they'll get in 2 turns, and it's looking like my opponent is going to get 7 points from Lorien and Dew, but it's going to be a slow 7 points. Let's see, Candles and Corpses, which is pretty good. New Powers Rising, which is pretty good. I get Ints. As soon as I move a Hobbit in there, I get what I need, and I get Thranduil's Archers, which is perfect. Exactly what I needed. I discard Help Unlooked For. I think that was an obvious discard. I declare the Fellowship. My opponent continues to sort of allocate minimal eyes and continues to get maximal Palantirs. And I continue to get plenty of character movement. Again, no Wills of the West. So no getting Aragorn so far. So again, I think in this situation, you want to move as quickly as possible before you get Nazgul on you. So I move as quickly as possible. My opponent immediately gets something. They draw 2, and I decide to take a random again. And you kind of think, would you take a random here or not? Obviously, if you get Strider, you're not going to be happy, but you're very close to being in Mordor. And I do want to be a little bit efficient with getting rid of my companions to get to Gollum quickly, because you can see the hunt pool, if you have Gollum, is filled with beautiful tiles. All these 1 reveal, 0 reveal, 2 reveal all become great. 1s, 2s also all become great. So I go for random. I, of course, get Strider, as you guys probably would have guessed. And this kind of, it will make my journey a little bit harder, but it makes a lot of my choices easier. My opponent moves some Nazgul. I pass. They play Horde from the east, which is pretty good. And no, I think they do something else. They attack Peligir, get the hit. I can tell they're going to Dol Amroth. So at this point, you can kind of see what's happening. What I see is they have 1 more movement. So they're not going to be able to hit Dol Amroth this turn. But I'm in this kind of awkward situation of the elves aren't at war. I can't play Círdan ships just yet. And that's my only tool for defending Dol Amroth. I don't have any musters this turn. I guess I could muster 1 elite into Dol Amroth, but I'd much prefer to use Círdan ships as it's super efficient. But I also want to get into Mordor this turn. I'm already at 1 movement. I need to use the rest of my my moves. So you can kind of think what you would do here. And you should think of what you should do as Shadow as well, because as Shadow, it's a very interesting decision, and it's something that I think Shadow should think about when attacking Dol Amroth. But let me show you what the rest of the turn turns into. I move. They double hit. I get another 3. I take Gimli, get 1 more corruption. Fine. I can still get into Mordor this turn. They move. They move everything out of Erebor as well, which is fine. I'm not going to be able to get in there super easily. I move my 1 unit from Old Forest Road into Woodland Realm, as well as the person from Westland. And this means that I'm basically not going to be able to play Círdan ships unless my opponent attacks me in Woodland Realm. My opponent plays whatever. Oh, they just draw shadow character card. I continue to move. They hit me again. They get an eye, which I'm fine with. At least I'm in Mordor and there's no threat of cruel weather. And they draw a 0 reveal, which is perfect. And so, corruption. I'm at 0 effective corruption inside of Mordor. Not good. Ideally, you want to be 2 or less. But I'm also very close to getting to Gollum, and I have Bilbo's Song in hand. So I'm thinking to myself, not bad. However, my opponent immediately plays Candles and Corpses and gets 2. So you're expected 1.5, so 2 is on the luckier side. But now I'm at 7 corruption, or an effective 2 corruption inside Mordor with Bilbo's Song. So I'm feeling less good, and the hunt pool is, I'll show it to you once we get in. I play Thranduil's Archers. I think this is a good time to play it. I get Fear Fire Foes, completely useless with good Shield Wall at least, and my opponent attacks Dol Amroth. And so, this next turn will be interesting. Let's go ahead. They get on. They went, as well as Corsairs of Umbar. So kind of useless at the moment. I get There Is Another Way. Great card. Healing more corruption is exactly what I need. The Red Arrow, which is fine. It's got scouts in case they attack into Fort Spison, which is pretty good. You can kind of see what the hunt pool looks like. It is interesting. It's got a lot of eyes. It's got the red eye, which would be terrible, and it's got a lot of what are very pleasant tiles. I discard Grey Company and House of Stewards because, Strider's dead, and Boromir is inside of Mordor. So kind of useless cards at the moment. And I am in. And my opponent, you can see they've got Isildur's Bane and On They Went. Um, my opponent definitely, you can kind of see my opponent in this game. It's like, hey, I could totally win a corruption victory. It's not looking great for these guys. So, anyways, they're ready. They get some eyes, 2 eyes, which is totally fine. I get some movement and some musters, so it's looking pretty good. And you can decide what you would do here as free people. It's interesting because Dol Amroth is like pretty undefended. There's just 3 regulars in there. He can't play Curidan ships, which I do have because the elves aren't at war. So the first thing I do is I put the elves to war. And it's interesting. My opponent decides to attack Woodland Realm, which I think is the right move. But you could have attacked Dol Amroth instead, right? And let me muster one more time in either Lorien or Woodland Realm, and then put under siege whichever one is weaker. But Woodland Realm is also super dangerous, as just like it's very near Erebor, and it's also very near a weak dew line with not many troops there. So I think this kind of forces my opponent's hand, and it gives me a chance to play Curidan ships. Now I'm feeling fairly well defended. It's a how many strength? It's a 7 strength army down in Dol Amroth against what is not a 2x strength on their side. And in Woodland Realm, it's a 6 strength army against what is a 12 strength army. So it could go either way. It's likely in Shadow's favor. So, but still, it feels good. Definitely feels good. My opponent attacks Lorien, not wanting me to use a ring to go ahead and change those die. I immediately hide. I don't want my opponent to play anything nasty. And then my opponent plays On They Went, noting that I continue to move. The red tiles are mounting, and I pass. My opponent attacks Woodland Realm. We each choose a card. They choose Deadly Strife, and I choose Shield Wall. Maybe it's a little early for Deadly Strife, but they get 3 hits. I get 2 hits. Maybe would have expected more. So 2 and 2. And I decide to downgrade both of my elites in Woodland Realm, leaving me with no regulars in the force pool. I think to myself, I'm not going to be mustering elves anywhere else. I'm not going to muster them in Rivendell. There's no way anything is going to happen there. I'm not going to muster them in Lorien, or the only thing I'm going to muster in Lorien is an elite. So I don't need any elves in my force pool except for this one elite left. Maybe that's a mistake. But I thought Woodland Realm could possibly survive. Maybe that's also a little bit naive. But if Woodland Realm does survive, boy, is it going to create some problems up there in the north. My final thought is that there's that one dwarf over in Vale of the Carnan right now that could take back Dale. I could start mustering some northern people there. I continue to pass. My opponent moves some Nazgul around, or decides not to. They first get the mouth, which is a great move. I move once. I get a 2. Again, very lucky. Obviously, take companion, and my opponent then moves their Nazgul around, which is strange to me. It's strange that they don't just finish Woodland Realm first, but anyways, I try again, and I get an eye, which sucks. But I did kind of look at the pool, and I noticed the max that I could get was a 3, and that would get me to Gollum, which is nice. And I wanted to kind of kill off the rest of my companions as fast as possible. So I kill off the rest of my companions, I get to Gollum, I am revealed. And my opponent plays Uruk-hai, goes ahead and musters more in Dol Amroth, and now Dol Amroth is looking beefy. Okay, so we're getting down to it. It's looking like there'll be, in my brain, I see these 3 strongholds under siege, and I think, okay, maybe 2 action die for each. My opponent's expected 4 or 5 attacks next round. I think that I'll get 2 more rounds of survival before that. And the bonus, I think, is that even if they take all of these things, I can retake Pelargir with this Force and Osgiliath. So I think to myself, I've got 2 more turns to dunk the ring. Let's go ahead and take it slow and try my best. So my opponent, right, is kind of in a pickle because I guess my opponent sees the Fellowship and they see how much corruption I have, and they probably are thinking to themselves, okay, I'm in a really good position. I've got Isildur's Bane. And my opponent's already at 7 corruption. But they don't know that I've got Bilbo's Song and There Is Another Way in my hand. And I'm saving There Is Another Way for using it during a movement because it doesn't actually add any die to the hunt box. So, anyways, they get Give It to Us and Hill Trolls, phenomenal cards. I get Smeagol Helps Nice Master, great. I need that. And King's Grandman at least has Shield Wall on it. I am ready. My opponent gets 3 eyes, a ton of Palantirs. Once again, lots of Palantirs, but 4 movement, which is what they need. They have a shot to go ahead and win this turn, and I get a phenomenal roll. This is just sort of the perfect roll. I immediately start by hiding. I don't want to lose any more of my die to Day Without Dawn. I think my opponent has Day Without Dawn. No, or did they? They do have it. I wonder why they didn't play it here. To just sort of slow me down. Anyways, they play Give It to Us. Obviously, good to immediately play. I play Smeagol Helps Nice Master. Good to play as well. So, again, the hunt pool is looking like so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 great tiles, 1, 2, 3 fine tiles. I'd take 3 corruption, but that's all right. And then 1, 2, 3 terrible tiles. My opponent attacks Lorien. There's not too much to do here. They played Great Host at first, which I think was strange-ish, but I guess it's pretty likely they're going to have more than me. I get 1 back. They get 2. They press. They play Deadly Strife. Yeah, they're super overkill. Maybe they didn't need to play Deadly Strife here. Maybe you save that for a tougher fight. But I guess you want to do it on 1 die. So I move again, and I get a 2 reveal, which is one of the better. This is almost the best card I could have drawn. Obviously, Smeagol Helps Nice Master. There's a couple things that would be better. Any of these ones would have been better, but 2 reveal is very pleasant. So I reveal. I think to myself, I've got this 1 turn. I don't need to win this turn because I can take back Pelargir. So I'm able to wait till the turn after. So, and the turn after, I'm going to be using the first thing that I'll use is There's Another Way. So I'll actually not be adding anything to the hunt box. So my opponent moves everybody over to Dol Amroth. I hide. They attack Dol Amroth. I try my best to defend Dol Amroth, and I kind of just get they get 0 on the first. I get 2 on the first. I'm like, yeah. They will post, which is good. And I think I just get womboed here. Yeah. No, this isn't even. Anyways, it is a hard fight. But I am slowly getting whittled down. Need to pass. They move. I don't know why they do this. I guess they're thinking about me trying for a military victory or something. It's a strange move here. I definitely don't see it being useful. Technically, they know that I played Day Without Dawn because I played it with Confusion. Or not Day Without Dawn, but through a day and a night. I probably would have just continued to attack Dol Amroth. But, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of some weird moves. I have this die. I don't want to use a ring for it just in case I get no movement next turn. That way, at least there's a chance that I can get in next turn. So if I get a Palantir, that is. So I attack Pelargir. So Faramir kind of coming in clutch because otherwise my opponent could have really had a realistic shot of winning this turn. And my opponent draws another red tile. I think that's all the red tiles. Get the tie back. They get Wormtongue, kind of useless, and return with Witch King. Both of these useless. Swarm of Bats is nice at least. I get Sudden Strike, and Sudden Strike, Path of the Roses. Both of those useless cards, at least some combat effects. So the I think is it. Yeah, this will be all the red tiles then. Okay, so Fellowship is ready. My opponent gets basically everything that you would want, except for Low Eyes. And I get everything that I would want. I've got enough movement to make my way in, especially because one of those Palantir is going to be used to play There Is Another Way. So I immediately play There Is Another Way. Again, this doesn't go into the hunt box, which is pretty cool. I move the Fellowship, and I get an eye, which is totally fine. A single one reveal, absolutely beautiful. Again, the hunt is like 50-50 terrible. I mean, it's very likely that I will make it in this turn. As if I get any of these red tiles, I basically need to not get 2 red tiles in a row, is what I need to win. And there's even some situations where I could maybe get 2 red tiles. I get the 3 and the 1 maybe, because the 1 stopped. I don't know. But if I get the 3 and the 1, so let's say I got 3 this turn, I would stop, I would move again, I get the 1, it's revealed, I would need to hide, move, and then play a ring. So there are some chances of me surviving even if I get 2 red tiles, but much fewer. I need to basically get 1 or fewer, and I don't get 1. So my corruption goes up, and here's where my opponent, and this is kind of, hey, I am holding in my hand Bilbo's Song, and I've been holding it for the past 5 turns of the game. And this is kind of where this pays off. Instead of playing it earlier, holding it till now, because my opponent plays Shelob Slayer, I hide the Fellowship, and then my opponent plays the Lidless Eye. So they change 3 of their die into eyes, which ostensibly it looks pretty smart, and it is really good. It takes these 2 tiles and it turns them from a win for me into a lose for me. But unfortunately, I had Bilbo's Song, which again brings them back 2 wins. So my opponent attacks the Lamroth. They womp it eventually. Eventually. I forget. I think in Woodland Realm, it's like some beautiful hit. They get 1 roll before they they get, they get 5 hits or whatever, or 3, whatever. They take it out in basically 1 fell swoop. They get 5 hits, 6 hits. Jeez. Because of Moonmakill. Anyways, Woodland Realm falls. There's no way that I am surviving another turn. I mean, there's slight possibilities that my folks in Pelargir can hold out against this big force in Dol Amroth, but I wouldn't really count on it. And I could always attack back from the Vale of Karnam, but I decided to go for it. No time like the present. Again, I just need to not get 2 red tiles in a row. So I move, and I just get a 1. And that is the game. So I guess a couple of things to note here. This move with Erebor in the beginning to get Book of Mazarbul was huge. And it completely shifted the tide. It caused my opponent to not get the Witch King turn 1. It caused them to have to reinforce this area heavily. It really set them back some turns. And if you're able to do that, I think it's super powerful, even though Gandalf was basically put out of commission for the entire fight. Taking out the Palantir of Orthanc, I think was a good move as well, just immediately giving one of your rings to do that. Um, I think from my opponent's perspective, like, hmm, I think my opponent played really well. I think I played well this time. I didn't make as many mistakes as I normally do. Um, write down in the comments below what you would have done differently in sort of this game. Um, and if y'all liked it, please do like and subscribe. I really appreciate that. Thanks, y'all, and have a wonderful, wonderful time playing more War of the Ring.